And now, WJCU University Heights takes a break from the Heights programming to bring you
Jewish Community
a
Radio.
weekly half hour every Friday. We bring you what's happening in the Jewish community, both locally and around the world. And we are recording this the night before the show, Thursday night, because, well, we can't always make it live in the studio. And that's, of course, why we have no bumper music today. But today we have a lot to cover, and it's really some big stories. Before I go into the big story, I gotta say something important. Some people may view this as being involved with politics. Well, we're not, because there's nothing to do with Ohio. Nothing to do with any of us here. It doesn't affect any of us directly. But it does affect us indirectly. And somebody argue directly, too. So it's an important topic that we need to cover on the show. So people who hear about this in the news understand what's really going on and what the problem is. So I have to really coach this at first because it's not politics per se for us, but it does affect us, and has a lot of people in the Jewish community and other communities too very upset. So we're not going to talk about the politics of it. We're going to be speaking about the results of the issue, which really is the heart of what matters. And I'm going to Elisheva introduce this. Elisheva, please.
Okay, absolutely. So, one of the burdens of recording on a Wednesday night for a Friday show was last week on Thursday evening. I was sent a news story regarding a school district in Texas. And what the news story was actually about was there's a school district, and the administrator, who happens to be the director of curriculum and instruction, this is important for this story, had been overheard and recorded as telling teachers to remember the concepts of a recent House bill that had been passed in Texas that requires teachers to present multiple perspectives when discussing widely debated and current controversial issues.
Sounds good at face value.
And make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, this administrator continued, that you have one that has an opposing, that has other perspectives. So I was sent this news story by several people Thursday night. And the downside of us not doing live radio is, of course, I couldn't directly address it on Friday. But of course, for a lot of people, I am the only Jewish person they know. And I was sent this story. What are your thoughts? And I've had quite a few thoughts since Thursday night, and some of those thoughts are not fit for radio broadcast, unfortunately.
And I will say that
But
I heard about, real fast, if I may, I will say that I heard about this also Thursday night, and I had thought about coming in live and doing a live show on this one topic, but my blood was boiling, so I couldn't do it.
yeah, probably better that we didn't. It gave us a few days to calm down. So, but social media was raging all weekend about it. And I even had people ask me, what would be an opposing view? And I said, I don't know, presenting Mein Kampf, presenting Holocaust deniers, and and I mean, so we were discussing this because it's very important to understand Dwight D. Eisenhower, who eventually became the president of the United States in the 1950s, prior to that was a general in the U.S. Army during World War II, was key in the liberation of the concentration camps, required the soldiers to take pictures and to get as much documentation as possible, because he said there will be people who claim this never happened. And so when I hear opposing view of the Holocaust, I don't know what to think, because are we justifying the Holocaust? Are we denying its existence? We could go with so many angles. And so that's why this story has been upsetting the different Jewish anti-defamation leagues all over the country. Holocaust museums have been putting out statements. The superintendent of this particular school district did apologize for this administrator's comments, However, as Fred and I have talked about in the past, an apology doesn't exactly fix the issue. We still have the problem of the feathers being scattered. But I
Explain that.
wanted to
Explain that,
present.
please.
So there's an old Jewish story. A person. This story's been told multiple ways, but a person wants to seek tshuva, repentance for something terrible that had happened. Went to the rabbi. Said, Rabbi, I spread this horrible gossip about this person, and I deeply, deeply regret it. What can I do to fix it? And the rabbi says, okay, go take a feather pillow, open it up into the wind, and let the feathers scatter and come back to me. So the person does this, comes back, a little bit later. Okay, Rabbi, I did that. Now what? And the rabbi says, now I want you to go gather up each and every one of those feathers that you scattered into the wind. And that's what gossip and speech do. You can't go back and gather up all the feathers after you've misspoke, after you've said these things. So an apology from the superintendent to me is just not enough. Uh, and it might have been said tongue in cheek. I don't know the context, but there was so just as a frame of reference, the law that was passed in Texas a few months ago is in regards to social studies curriculum. And what the law basically says is that a teacher is not permitted to present one viewpoint on controversial topics. The teacher is responsible for providing multiple perspectives. And I really don't wish to go into like what this bill passed was in response to, but I have this inclination that this was done as a test case to undo the law.
And the problem here, obviously, is I'll just say is it gives a forum to Holocaust deniers. This is something that has been a pain in the side of Jews for a long time. People will go ahead and make false claims. Oh, see, look, see, the Holocaust never happened. This is proof. It's just there to get Jews to give sympathy to Jews, and really it makes us all just angry that people would claim that my father's father was murdered by Nazis for politics, or the Jews are claiming that our relatives were murdered, or in fact, of course, some people even died at all, and claiming that it's just Jews and they're just whatever. And so when we hear this kind of thing, and I'm being as calm as I can right now, really holding it in, but we hear these kind of things, it makes our blood boil.
Well, it made my blood boil even more because I know as a teacher, I know some of the very controversial issues going on in education right now, and I don't want to pick a side in this debate. I believe openly, publicly on the radio. See, I believe my role as an educator is to educate. My role as an educator is to present information in a way that teaches others how to think, how to discern, how to reason, and I do believe that different perspectives on many subjects matter. It's just that the problem is as a Jew, I don't see room for multiple perspectives on something such as the Holocaust.
Basically, what you're really saying is you're getting up on a soapbox, and you're not just saying the world is flat. You're basically laughing at people for claiming the world is round. And then there are people who believe it. And that's part of the problem. And yes, the Holocaust is horrible, no question. What Hitler did is unthinkable. People won't even, you can't even imagine this could have even happened. So therefore, it's easy to say, oh, it's fake. Yeah, they're just making it up. And this is the problem we are facing. As Jews, we're dealing with this almost. I fight this stuff all the time. I hear the claims. It gets tiring. We don't believe in giving. these people any forum, any safe quarter. There is no reasonable aspect or argument. And by the way, when the soldiers were told document, it was actually, they were laughing. Come on, who's going to believe this? I'm not taking pictures of this. And the reality was, it was reality. And years later, it was proven to be quite necessary. So, there's a great movie that has this in it. And if you get a chance to see it, it's on once a year or so on the local news, local station somewhere. Cast a Giant Shadow. It's about Israel's first general. And in it was, of all people, John Wayne, among other great stars. It had in there, I forget his name, Michael Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
And in the show, in the movie, very clearly, it was very clear. And I'm not gonna exact quote, but I believe it was the quote of the general played by.
It was actually Kirk Douglas that was
Kirk.
in it.
Yeah. I could think of it. I think of Kirk Douglas.
Michael Douglas's father.
Michael Douglas' father. Thank you.
Really, it was released in 1966. Frank Sinatra was also in it. Yul Brynner, Angie Dickinson. So it's a classic movie.
Yeah, and in the movie, the character of the general played by John Wayne said, and I'm not going to do exact quote, but you can read into it. Get this SOB, every bike you can find. I don't care where you get it from. Get every truck you can find. I don't care where you get it from. It was very powerful because nobody believed it. Even the general didn't believe it until he saw it with his own eyes. And so the order to take photos was really very important, monumental. And I actually bought one of the photos on eBay years ago from a soldier's family, I should say. And I have it. I will never, ever give that up to anybody because it's an original photo taken by a U.S. soldier. And where was I believe it was Dachau, but still, the point though is that it happened. And we just don't play the game to flat earth society people. Most people don't in general, especially Jews. We are so tired of this. We will fight it everywhere tooth and nail. And to give a forum, to create a forum of, we can go ahead and have we're deniers, and we can have a way to get in deniers. Please don't. We do not want to give safe quarter to deniers.
Right, but just to show how real this is. So I've probably mentioned this before. As a teacher, I'm in one of the few professional fields that has constant scrutiny from many, many, many stakeholders, parents, administrators, school board, upper administrators, the state of Ohio, the U.S. Department of Education, people in the community who just have opinions about what I do in my classroom. It's just amazing. But where I'm going with this is, so in Texas, in response to this law that was passed over the summer, teachers were given this rubric in order to decide if a book was appropriate to use in the classroom. And I'm not going to go through the rubric, but it's basically boils down to they're evaluating every book on credibility, perspective, and appropriateness. So obviously appropriate means making sure there's no explicit language of a sexual nature or anything like that. But the standard fully met for credibility is the author provides balanced information by providing multiple perspectives.
So basically what they're saying is that Holocaust educators must present Holocaust denial as possible or real fact,
in order for the book to be approved within the curriculum. Now listen to the standard not met for perspective. A book represents a singular dominant narrative in such a way that it cannot be balanced with other materials, may be considered offensive.
So what they're saying is that people like the great Holocaust lecturer, Elie Wiesel, who survived the Holocaust, would have to have his books presented with him presenting Holocaust denial in the same book. A survivor of the
Elie
Nazi
Wiesel, God rest his soul.
yeah, a guy who survived the Nazi atrocities would have had to written a book, which includes the opposite of what he said happened, the opposite of what he witnessed, the opposite of what he experienced, in
And
order for
and
the book to
and
be
witness
credible.
testimony and witness testimony is something that we do teach in today's schools. It's considered a valid account. The Anne Frank Diary of a Young Girl, one of the first books to present what it was like to be hidden in Europe during World War II. We can't lose these. And where I was going with this is because other controversial issues are too hot button, and if somebody were to suggest a different perspective on them, they would be called racist. And so, where I think the Holocaust was picked on is, as I keep saying, anti Semitism, the hate that everyone can agree upon. Oh, well, let's pick on the Holocaust. That's where I think this administrator was going. Because if we pick on almost any other event that happened to other groups of people, they would be called racist. That's where I think it was going. And it was so deeply misguided. I'm not taking away from the horrible things that have happened to other people, but don't use the Holocaust as a test case.
Yeah, yeah,
Please don't.
yes.
It happened. I mean, I spent a whole semester in high school from another great Holocaust educator, Leah Trish-Rubinsky, God rest her soul.
She
And
was terrific.
she taught me so much. We read Night by Elie Wiesel. We read Mila 18 by Leon Uris. I researched about how as far back as 1933, the world knew what Hitler was up to. And and so when we're sitting here and people are using, oh, well, we're going to pick on the Holocaust. It screams anti-Semitism to me.
When I was in college, I was selected by an organization, not important which one, to go to Poland and see Auschwitz firsthand, because I was deemed as somebody who was probably going to be a future Holocaust educator. And I'll never forget that trip. It was with leaders from all across the country, all across the world for that matter. We all met in France and then went on together. And to walk into the gates of Auschwitz, where my father was, to see the building where he had to live and endure, was horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Words cannot describe what seeing this giant. Now, I want to give people just perspective here. A giant wall of just old shoes that belonged to the victims. A wall of suitcases that belonged to the victims. Glasses, massive pile of glasses that belonged to the victims. It's unbelievable. And yes, it's still there. And yes, you can go and see it yourself. It's something that when somebody goes ahead and denies it, when I see it, it really, really upsets me. And I'm holding it in. Probably tell by my voice. This is not my normal speaking voice. I'm really holding it in right now. This is something which is so atrocious, what we're seeing now. Now, why is it atrocious? Let's discuss this. This is very important. Why is it such a big deal to the Jews? First of all, I don't know if you know that, but we saw the Holocaust survivors are still alive, like my mother. And their life story is being denied. What they went through. But more than that, there are those people who say and make the claim that Israel is only here out of the false claim of Jews to gain sympathy. Let me tell you something right now. The creation of Israel and the plan for creating Israel happened way before the Holocaust. It was late 1800s, where Herzl said, "In Basel, I created Israel." I think it was Herzl. Herzl, or was it? I forgot his name now. My mind went blank. I'm sorry. I'm holding in my anger so tough. I can see the guy's face. I can't think of his name. Whatever. Anyhow, the point is that
If you're picturing a long beard, it's Herzl.
exactly. Thank you. What was the other guy? No, the other guy. No beard. Gray hair. Whatever. My mind's gone blank. Um, the point though is that forgive me for that, but I'm just upset by this whole scenario. The claim was made that the Holocaust has been fabricated to create Israel. That is done for two reasons. One, of course, denial of the Holocaust. Two, to deny Israel's right to exist. The fact is that Israel's establishment, modern establishment, I say modern because it was established before, but reestablished in 1948.
The modern state of Israel.
Modern state of Israel, correct, was done way, way before. And the work was laid down long before. And you had San Remo conference. Look that up. You'll learn a lot. The conference in Basel. There's so many different conferences that ended up creating the Jewish state. It was not done because a bunch of Jews dreamed something up. They just invented it for sympathy. That's not how it happened. The point, though, is that the deniers use that as their claim, which also irks us to no end.
Just to give you an idea of the level of ignorance in our society surrounding the Holocaust,
Mm-hmm.
there was one of the news channels back in last September. I just happened to search this online while you were talking.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 in 10 respondents of adults over 40s did never recall ever hearing the word Holocaust. 63% of millennials and Gen Z, so that would be younger than us, Fred, so like late 30s, younger, surveyed did not know that 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. These statistics are quite staggering. When and some of it's ignorance, but some of it is the work of the Holocaust deniers. I told a story a long time ago or a few months back, where a student, when I told him I was Jewish, he thought that all of us had been killed by Hitler. He didn't know we were still around. So he knew there was a concept. He just figured we didn't exist anymore. I mean, there's my fear when people were talking about we need to change what's being taught in schools. My fear was they're going to go after Holocaust studies first. And that was my fear. That was my deep-seated fear. I believe all history is important to learn. In Germany, it is required to know about the Holocaust. It is not denied. It is not shoved under the rug. Germany is not proud of what they did, but they still understand, no, we need to teach about this. We need people to understand. So this never happens again. And we keep saying, never again, never again. And that's what we're talking about.
Exactly. And that's why we said earlier that this is not a matter of politics. This is a matter of the results of politics. And it's sad that we have a scenario today where people are doing this statewide and possibly even taking it nationally. And the first action to deny the Holocaust is get it out of the schools so nobody believes it. Then when they hear about it, they go, oh, that never happened. Come on. I would have learned about that at school.
But if you take it out of the schools, I mean, this is where our hands are tied as teachers.
Yeah.
I don't believe in bringing politics into school.
You shouldn't.
I don't believe it has a place there. I believe school is where I'm teaching students how to think. I believe it's understanding history, understanding what it is to be a good citizen in our country, understanding how to even be a nice person. Because frankly, that's not really being done anymore in our society. But one of the things that if we want to repair some of the horrific things that happened in everyone's past, and I'm not taking away from anyone else who had horrific things happen in their history, but if one of the things we need to do as a collective, as a group, as all of us, is acknowledge these atrocities, and how do we move forward and how do we do better? Because that's a key concept in Judaism. We don't write someone off for making a mistake. We strive to do better. We strive to improve. Go back to my story that I started with in the beginning. Maybe after the whole ordeal of having to try to gather all those feathers, that was difficult, if not impossible. Maybe the next time this person was presented with an opportunity to spread slander about another person, they thought better of themselves and they were like, no, I don't think this is a good idea because that took too much to try to pick up those feathers. So if you learn a lesson and you grow from it, then the stuff doesn't keep happening.
Yeah. And it's so sad that we have to talk about this on the show. It really is. And there are some great people out there I want you to know who have done a phenomenal job trying to make sure that we fight this. And one of whom is Lori Cardozo Moore, who has a group called I forget her name. Oh, Light Unto the Nationalizations. Oh my God, I can't think of Lori's organization. I'll think of it in a second. But Lori Cardozo Moore has an organization where she does work to make sure that
Israel Allies Foundation.
no, proclaiming justice to nations.
Okay.
But she's basically making sure that she's a Christian, non-conversionary, and believes that we have to treat Israel properly from a Christian perspective. And also Pastor Hagee, same thing. His group is Christians United for Israel. And both these people are leading the way and making sure that, hey, listen, we're not conversionary. But we're going to make sure that we are there to say, hey, those who support Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed. It's in the Bible.
Amen.
And on that note, I gotta say one more important thing here. Today, Israel is once again fighting for its life. Again, the Jewish people are fighting for their lives. Almost every day, Israel is surrounded with people who just want to kill them. Thank God the Abraham Accords are bringing peace to the Middle East. But meanwhile, I want to read you a headline from IsraelNationalNews.com. And I think this really sums it up. Air Force, meaning Israel's Air Force, resumes training to attack Iran nuclear sites. Yes. It looks like Iran's getting close to the bomb, and Israel's ready to take action. When Israel years ago bombed the nuclear facilities in Iraq, it was condemned all over the world. How dare you, how dare you, how dare you? And then when the Gulf War happened, Israel was thanked very quietly. Oh, by the way, thank you for preventing Saddam Hussein from having a nuclear weapon. Oh, by the way, quietly, not publicly. What's happening today is a similar scenario. Israel's going to be attacked. How dare you attack Iran? You're going to start a war. Let me tell you something very, very important. Israel will defend itself no matter what. We as Jews will never, ever allow ourselves to go to we had before. If Israel does take action, they probably will, against Iran nuclear sites, just remember one thing. Those weapons were not used against Israel, nor against any U.S. allies, nor against the U.S. And with that, I just have one thing to say. Please, remember one thing important. In Judaism, our songs are about peace. Oseh shalom b'mamav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Al kol Yisrael v'ru amen. Elisheva, please translate.
May the one who brings peace all
All over the
it's
world.
basically the one all over the world, and let us say amen. I just wanted to paraphrase it.
Okay, but still, we have to do candling times almost at time, Elisheva. And Shabbat, of course, is a time for peace and relaxation with our families. And let's hope for a peaceful, restful Shabbat. With that candlelight time, Friday night tonight is no later than 6:17 p.m. And Shabbat ends no earlier than 7:15 p.m. With that, Shabbat Shalom. And
Shabbat
please,
shalom.
peace. Let's remember that one thing, peace. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom means peace. All right, let's go back to the heights. Thank you very much.